a new set of sanctions on some of Russia's largest companies and financial institutions. Along with our allies, with whom I've been coordinating closely the last several days and weeks, I've repeatedly made it clear that Russia must halt the flow of weapons and fighters across the border into Ukraine, that Russia must urge separatists to release their hostages and support a ceasefire, that Russia needs to pursue internationally mediated talks and agree to meaningful monitors on the border. I've made this clear directly to Mr. Putin. Many of our European partners have made this clear directly to Mr. Putin. We have emphasized our preference to resolve this issue diplomatically, but that we have to see concrete actions and not just words, that Russia, in fact, is committed to trying to end this conflict along the Russia-Ukraine border. So far, Russia has failed to take any of the steps that I mentioned.
If Vladimir Putin has his way, there will be a new USSR. There would be yet another Cold War, and America would once again fear Russia. While he may not be going about it strategically correct, there is no doubt we have another dictatorial madman running that country. And President Obama has been forced to go head-to-head with Putin and his buddies yet again. Question is, this time did he get it right? And what's down the road for Mr. Muscles in Russia? Let's welcome to MidPoint from the Republican consulting firm Harcom Strategies and a veteran consulting on political campaigns around the world. Tyler Harber joins us today via the telephone. Tyler, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Tyler, first of all, your initial reaction on the president's sanctions against Russia and what he did announce.
Well, Putin said that he is, again, very angry at the sanctions, just the same reaction that he gave the first time. And we believe, at least from the observation side, that these sanctions are soft. Sure, they're going to squeeze some of the economic aspects of Russia, especially in the energy and oil-related fields, but this is really not going to have a big effect. It's not like Putin is going to rush to bring the soldiers back across the border from Ukraine. It's not like he's going to reverse his ideology of establishing a new Russian empire. And these sanctions are going to have the same effect that the last sanctions had. Absolutely nothing.
All right, now here is Russian President Vladimir Putin, the quote that he said yesterday in Brazil, which of course is a lot of saber rattling. We've heard this all before, but it's worth pointing out that here he comes again. And I'd like to quote, without any doubt they, U.S. sanctions, will push U.S.-Russian relations to a dead end and cause very serious damage. And I am sure that this also damages national long-term strategic interests of the U.S. government and the U.S. people. Honestly now, is there anything that Vladimir Putin and Russia can do in response to this that would have anybody worried whatsoever?
Well, they may have just shot down a commercial airliner. It still remains to be seen whether or not the weapons that the Russians have given the separatists, or that the Russian armed forces in Ukraine have shot down multiple planes, or if they're responsible for this new Malaysian Airlines airline that has just come down. So this is a big deal. I think that the sanctions play right into Putin's hands. He wants to separate the United States and the USSR, or the Russian Federation. And he wants to have that separation, and he wants to reignite the Cold War. And we just keep playing into his hands. And hopefully now that that maybe perhaps this Malaysian Airlines flight has gone down, and maybe information comes out that it was Russian-made weapons, that it may have been even Russian-based missiles that have taken it down. It still remains to be seen, of course. That maybe that forces some real action to stop this Russian expansion and stop this Russian empire building. But Putin doesn't fear Obama. He doesn't fear the United States, because we're all talk and no action.
All right, now I want to get on to Flight 17 for a moment here. According to the Facebook page of Anton Gerashenko, who's advisor to the Ukrainian Interior Ministry, the aircraft was, quote-unquote, shot down over Ukraine by, quote-unquote, terrorists operating a Buk surface-to-air missile system. Now, let's just say that indeed this was something, and we don't know at this point right now. But if the Russians were to shoot this down, wouldn't that be incredibly stupid of them to do?
I think it may be a case of mistaken identity. And yes, I do believe it would be something incredibly stupid to do. But a lot of times, especially at 30, 40,000 feet, the cargo plane and the commercial airliner do not look dissimilar. And so I think it could be a case of mistaken identity. I think it is definitely a huge tactical mistake. But hearing about the broadness and the size of the debris field and the fact that it would take a semi-autonomous military-based missile to take down an airliner of that size and of that altitude, it still kind of remains to be seen if a field-based rocket-based or a field-based rocket program could actually take it down. And I think it's so close to the Russian border, we may never actually know. But I think there may be suspicions that there was strong involvement. But this is just a horrible tragedy, and maybe this is the tragedy that sets in motion what should have happened the first time with Putin, which is direct action to stop the expansion of his Russian empire.
Okay, let's get right to that now. Direct action to stop the empire. You use the phrase empire building and Russian expansion then. What then could the president have done in order to get right to that point of getting to the heart of this matter?
We could have dispatched special forces to help train and help stabilize the Ukrainian military and help stabilize Ukrainian military lines. The Ukrainians have said repeatedly that they needed weapons, they needed additional resources, and they have asked for additional weapons. And from what I understand, the United States has limited the type of weapons and resources it has given to the Ukrainians. And I think that we should have taken a grander stand here. We needed to mark a bright line of distinction and say we are actively going to back the Ukrainian government, and we are going to hold fast on the lines, and we are not going to allow the Russian separatists or the Russian armed forces or whoever it may be that is pro-Russian and pro-Putin to continue to eat away at the Ukrainian countryside.
Tyler, let me interrupt here, though, for a moment, because what you're talking about is putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. This is already a war-weary nation to the point where we're trying to get boots off the ground in a lot of places right now. We're trying to get Americans out of harm's way. So wouldn't that be almost impossible at this point? I mean, certainly the backlash on that would be something that the administration at this point in time, with the backlash they've taken on everything else, simply doesn't want a chance.
Sure, and I'm not necessarily saying we need to put a military force there. I'm saying we need to do something similar that we did in Iraq a few weeks ago, which is bring in several hundred special forces, specially trained military experts, and help them or allow them to help the Ukrainian armed forces. I'm not saying put our boys on the front lines. I'm saying that we need to equip the Ukrainians to be able to protect the lines, and right now they are completely unable to protect anything. Their own government buildings are being taken over. It's riots in the streets. It's complete anarchy, and I think that they really need some help, and no one has stepped up, and we just keep throwing these paper sanctions at Putin, and he keeps saying, oh, that's scary, that makes me angry, but it really doesn't stop him from doing anything.
All right, couple of minutes we have left here. Putin is not going to be able to be he will not be able to put back together the USSR. That simply is something that doesn't seem as if it will ever happen. It would only be a pipe dream for those who claim it may happen. But obviously he wants to put an empire back together. He wants to be seen as dangerous again. What is it that America needs to do right now, whether it's the Obama administration or someone after him, in order to prepare ourselves for what many believe is an eventuality that the Russians will be stronger again and they will create some sort of a real problem for us in a not too short period of time?
I think they're already creating a problem for us. They have a significant control over the energy outflow, the natural gas, the crude oil, and even iron ore, copper ore, even coal output.
Then what should we be doing right now?
What should we do? We should be putting people on the ground to not be on the front lines, but to help the Ukrainians stop this expansion, because if he expands in Ukraine, he'll expand everywhere else. And he may not build the USSR again, but he will have an impact.
Is there anything else we can do, knowing full well that Putin would love to create a cozy relationship with China as well to the West, and that becomes part of the problem?
I think it probably is already part of the problem, especially since our economy is so dependent upon Chinese investment. I think we're in a really bad situation.
Would it be fair to say then that Vladimir Putin, no matter what you do to this guy at this point, he and his cronies are going to continue to rattle sabers and try and get in America's face as much as they possibly can?
Absolutely, and I think that we're taking a very Chamberlain-esque approach to this. We say, don't do that. He says, okay, I won't take Crimea, and he does anyway, and then we say, okay, well, we're just going to ignore that, and we're going to say, don't do that again, and he does something else. We've got to stand up and do something real, not just sanctions.
Tyler Harber, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for the time. We'll do it again.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. It is interesting to note, too, that two of the companies that the president has levied sanctions against, which is Rosneft and Gazprom Bank, they are both owned by allies of Vladimir Putin, so he's getting right to the friendship base as well. Next up, the reason the American economy is in such excellent shape is because it is exactly as the Obama administration planned it. Sit on that for a few moments. We'll return with reality.